Chandler Rome actually looks very rested, joining us from The Athletic, covering the Astros. And I mean, hey, you're going to get more rest now. And I know you're used to working this deep into the year. Chandler, how you doing? And what was your take from yesterday? Were you surprised, not just that the Astros lost, but that they got shellacked?
I told someone before the game that I had absolutely no feeling for how that game was going to go, just because I've seen so many different iterations of this Astros team show up this year. And then the one you got was the Minute Maid Park version of the Astros. It's the most baffling thing that I think I've ever seen. They lost 21 of their last 28 games at Minute Maid Park this season. They lost They lost 6 playoff games in a row at Minute Maid Park. They went 7 for 58 with runners in scoring position during home playoff games this year. They looked like a completely different team. It looked like two separate teams when they played at home and when they played on the road. And I don't know that there's a great explanation. They tried to. I mean, the batter's eye was a big talking point. They extended it in September, but I mean, at some point you have to look at the other side and say the Rangers have the same backdrop. The other teams you're playing have the same backdrop, and the Rangers scored 11 runs last night and 9 runs the night before. As far as last night goes, I didn't expect Christian Javier to only get 1 out. I mean, this is a guy that they talk about. He's called El Reptil, right? He's a cold-blooded, kind of slow heartbeat guy. Nothing gets to him. Martin Maldonado, after the game, pretty much acknowledged that he was too amped up, that his velocity was all over the place. He was overthrowing, and you kind of saw how that transpired. Corey Seager hit the 4th pitch of the game, 440 feet, and then that was kind of the harbinger for everything to come. It was an inglorious way for a season to end, but I'm not sure it was that surprising because, I mean, the flaws in this team had kind of shown themselves throughout the second half. The pitching had started to regress a little bit, the starting pitching especially. Knew they had the bullpen advantage, but when you're asking your bullpen to get 26 outs in a game 7, I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster, and that's pretty much what happened.
But the whole time people are thinking, and even Alex Bregman said, well, everyone's counted us out. So everyone was counting them out. Is this a dynasty, or is there too much hate? Have they not done enough? We asked it earlier on our poll question here.
They've been to the American League Championship Series 7 years in a row. That's really hard to do. Are they a major league dynasty? I think that's a perfectly fair question for debate. If you want to crystallize it, are they an American dynasty? Maybe. I mean, but it's really hard to do what they've done. And I mean, you can't take anything away from them. They did it, after the scandal came to light in 2020. They've done this with stricter sign stealing rules in place from 2020 to 2023. It just seems like, and they've done it too with a lot of turnover, a lot of moving parts. They fired their general manager after winning the World Series last year. They let Carlos Correa walk. They let Zach Greinke walk. They let Garrett Cole walk. They let Justin Verlander walk for the first half of this season and then brought him back. They've done this despite so much turnover and so much changing faces that it's commendable what they've done. Whether they're a dynasty by a true sense of the word, I think that's up to you and kind of how you define dynasty. But this is not something to scoff at or to kind of look over. This is really hard to do what they've done.
I'm going to bring in a fan question. Highlight 8 said, how did JP France have the longest leash this postseason while getting rocked? How does Dusty keep him in the game that long when other dudes can be dealing and still get pulled? Game 7 ALCS was France's 2nd appearance this postseason. What did you hear from him after the game? I think Dusty was asked about it, right?
Last night I think really showed two separate styles of how that game was managed. Bruce Bochy went straight to Jordan Montgomery with Michael Brantley up in the 4th inning to squash that and keep the momentum in their dugout, and it worked. And look, I get the rationale behind going to JP France there. They had, like we said, Christian Javier gave them no chance. They had to cover 26 outs with their bullpen. They needed length of some kind. And JP France is a starter. He's down there. He's stretched out for this reason. Where I sort of question the process is I think he gave up a leadoff single. He struck out Leody Taveras and then walked Marcus Semien on 4 pitches that were not close. He had faced the 3 batters. They had no one up in the bullpen. Then Corey Seager hits the infield single. The bases are loaded, still going up in the bullpen. Evan Carter, 2-run double down the right field line. Then they get Hector Neris up. And you kind of wonder, if you're going to use Hector Neris that early in the game, why not get him in there for Seager? I know you can, but it just didn't seem like there was a ton of aggression. It didn't seem like there was a ton of, just the bullpen management left a lot to be desired. But again, you look at a game like that, when you're down 3-0 and your starter gets 1 out before you can take a swing, it's tough to blame, he should have hit for the guy here, or he should have used a high leverage reliever here. That's a tough hill to climb, but there were some questionable decisions, letting Marcell Donato hit in the 4th inning that early, that's what Dusty's done all year. And like it or not, he stuck to his philosophies and he stuck to his plan, from game 1 of the season to game 7 of the ALCS, and, I think I wrote this last night, patience and faith and positivity like Dusty always exudes. That's great in the grind of a 162-game season. When your season's on the line in game 7 of the ALCS, I think it warrants a little more urgency, warrants a little more action.
Chandler, two questions about this whole situation. I'm going to start with one, having done the ALDS and talking about game 4 and who he was going to pitch. Dusty was all for Urquidy. So why was Urquidy not in the game before JP France? And then after you answer that, then I have a follow-up kind of along the same lines.
Well, Urquidy did get rocked in game 4 of this ALCS against the Rangers. I don't know if they wanted to put him back out there against that lineup. They teed off on him in game 4. It got kind of lost because the Astros built such a big lead, but he was giving up pockets. I think he only got 8 outs in that start. JP France threw well against them, against the Rangers in game 2. Shut them down for a little bit, let the Astros get back in that game. If they would have won that game, JP France would have been the MVP because he came in and really stabilized things. So I think that had more to do with it than anything. They saw JP France throw well against this lineup in game 2. Jose Urquidy did not. So I think that's why France was over Urquidy on the pecking order.
Okay, and then as we're going to get to here, but the rumor is this is Dusty Baker's last year, and you've reported it with Britt Giroli, but isn't this kind of what's missed with Dusty Baker? These type of games, these bullpen games, these games where everything doesn't go correctly, and that's why he's really never won a game 7. And then you have Bruce Bochy, like you mentioned with Montgomery, the way he handles it, the way he prepares, that's why he's never lost one of these game 7s. Is it just a mentality thing, or is it Dusty's bugaboo?
It's the reputation Dusty has, fair or unfair. He has not won a game 7. I believe he's only had 2 wins in his career in a winner-take-all elimination game. For me, I can't put last night on Dusty Baker. He gave the ball to Christian Javier, who had been one of the best postseason pitchers the last 3 or 4 years. He didn't get the job done. A lineup that is constructed to carry this team just didn't hit at home. I can't put last night on Dusty Baker, but yeah, AJ, to get to your point, that is the reputation he's kind of earned. I think this season as a whole kind of showed a little bit of that as well, because last season this team won 106 games with one of the greatest pitching staffs I think any of us have seen. It was really hard last year to go wrong. It seemed like anyone they put in a game, matter, they came in and shut everyone down. This year, given the injuries, given some regression, given some variance, a lot of moves were more magnified this year. A lot of managerial moves on the margins, a lot of things like that, a lot more magnified this year. And look, you can't argue with the results at the end of the day. This team won 90 games. They won the division. They caught the Rangers in the regular season. They caught the American League champions in the regular season, beat them for another division title. So, but yeah, this was certainly a season that I think some of Dusty's decision-making and some of his preferences kind of really did come more under the microscope this year, maybe than any in his Astros tenure.
Chandler, 2 follow-up questions on the future of the manager position for the Astros. 1, if Dusty Baker somehow decides that he does want to come back, because I know he didn't confirm that he's definitely done, would the Astros still say, you've got the job, all you? Or would there be potential pushback? And then 2 is the other route. If Dusty's like, hey, that's it, I'm retiring from this position, Do you think that I'm not going to just say, oh, who do you think they're going to hire? This is tough. It's so early. Do you think they would go more towards the veteran route of like the Buck Showalter, Melvin switching to the Giants? We're talking to Joe Madden later. Those guys that have been around, or the Skip Schumacher kind of newer, more recently retired former player route, just based on how the team is being run nowadays, since James Click departed, and definitely there's different people in charge there.
Well, to answer your first question, I'm really not sure. I think Dusty Baker has earned the right, given his career in baseball, given his status just as one of the game's true great men. I think he's earned the right to do this on his own terms. And if he decides, look, and what Britt and I reported last night is that he has told multiple people, both inside and outside the Astros organization, that this is it. That this year was his final year as a manager. Now, obviously, he reserves the right to maybe he sleeps on it the next couple of days and decides he doesn't want to quit managing. But I do think it's fair to note that he is not under contract right now. He managed this year on a 1-year contract that has expired, so that would require Jim or Dana Braun to offer him a new contract. And, I do wonder whether that is something that they want to do at this point. I think it'd be an awkward conversation to have. And I don't know how it would go, quite frankly. I think, it's one of those things that until Dusty makes it official, I don't think we want to jump the gun on anything. But, to your second question, I think certainly this organization is going into a little more they're trending a little more toward blend. It's no secret that a lot of people thought, this team went a little too analytically heavy, especially under James Click. Some people in the front office, some people close to Jim Crane thought that, and they want more of a blend. They want more of they're not abandoning analytics. That is not true. Jim Crane's still pumping money into their R&D department. They're still, doing a lot analytically and a lot of advanced metrics, but they want more of a little bit of a blend. So I don't know. Do they go the internal route? And, Joe Espada is the name that's going to get thrown around a lot. A guy that's interviewed for a ton of managerial jobs, has not gotten them, has been with the Astros since 2018. I think if they want to promote continuity for the couple of years they still have this core in place, I think that's the logical choice. They also have Omar Lopez on staff, who doesn't get talked about a lot. He's the first base coach. He's got 13 years of managerial experience in the minor leagues. He managed Team Venezuela in the WBC this year, got him to the semifinals. So that's a guy, too, that I think deserves a little this way. But I do think, with the Astros, you always wonder when these decisions come to pass, who is making the decisions? Because Jim Crane, as I think everyone knows, has a pretty considerable influence in the baseball operations decisions here. Jeff Bagwell has had a prominent voice. Reggie Jackson's had a prominent voice. So my first question before I start kind of compiling a list of candidates is like, who is hiring this job? Is it Jim Crane? Is it Dana Braun? Is it Jeff Bagwell? Like, who is hiring this position? Because, if they give Dana autonomy to hire his own manager, then you start looking at, guys he worked with the Braves. Walt Weiss is there, has managerial experience. Erik Young is a guy, he was Dana Brown's high school teammate, and he's on the Braves coaching staff. Do they give him a look maybe? So there's a lot of moving parts here. But I think if there is a managerial search, what the first question they have to answer is who is making the actual hire.
All right, a little bit on the game. Chappie, Aroldis Chapman, hits the hardest pitch he's thrown. He hits Chas McCormick. It's the hardest pitch he's thrown all season. After Abreu hit Mitch Garver with 97 in the ribs. Is this more indicative of Chappie clearly retaliating, or did it show Abreu wasn't throwing at Adolis the other day?
Take away the 2 hit by pitches. Brian Abreu was not that effective in this series. Certainly not what he was in the ALDS. Certainly not what he was from the second half of the season on. I mean, I think he entered the postseason on like a 30-inning scoreless streak. Was not effective in the ALCS. This is a guy that made 72 appearances in the regular season and then a ton more. This is the most he's thrown ever. Still a young reliever. I wonder if fatigue was catching up with him. I'm not here to debate intent or no intent because I don't want my mentions to be blown up any more than they already are. So, I wonder if Abreu just some fatigue hit him. The optics of what happened with Adolis Garcia looked awful. I mean, I think everyone on both sides acknowledged it. Even the Astros acknowledged how awful those optics look. But like you asked about Aroldis Chapman and Chas McCormick last night, if you are the Rangers and you're going to retaliate, I feel like I don't know if doing it to a guy like McCormick is the guy, but I mean that's the time and the place, I guess, to do it. He hits him in the lower half. I feel great, but hits him in the lower half in a game that's long since decided. I don't know. I'm not here to debate intent or anything like that, but certainly this is a rivalry. This ALCS, I think the Silver Boot rivalry was certainly reignited in the regular season. This ALCS just ratcheted it up, and the Astros already have a pretty hate-filled rivalry with the Mariners in their own division. This one is getting up there as well, and it's going to be fascinating to see because the Rangers aren't going anywhere. I mean, this team is going to be just as good next year. The Mariners, if Jerry DiPoto and whoever the owner is are listening to Cal Raleigh, maybe they'll spend money this offseason. And they'll get better. So this is going to be a fascinating sort of subplot to next season and kind of how these teams respond and go about each other in this American League West race that's looking far and far more tougher than at any point in this Astros run.
Chandler, two names for you for the Astros to name. One is Ron Washington. Former Ranger manager, took him to the World Series. Boom, mic drop by the Astros. We're going to hire your old guy. And two, Erik Kratz, ex-Astro great, known for tripping on red carpet. Think of how many laughs they could get if they hired him.
Orange carpet,
my bad.
Speechless.
Yep, we made him leave.
Chandler, you froze for a sec.
All right, I asked Kratz, do you want the job? No?
Such
okay,
a liar. He's low-key lying right now.
No, he's not. He doesn't want to listen to someone else tell him what to do.
I'll take you off my candidate list. But I did have a thought. Like, I mean, you say Ron Washington, former Ranger manager. Like, I think Jim Crane likes he likes names. He likes and he likes I think sticking it to some of the Astros rivals. He loves when they beat the Yankees, things of that nature. Will Venable is Bruce Bochy's right-hand man in Texas. He's about as close of a blend as you can find. A guy that has played. He's a former big leaguer. Went to Princeton. A very nice blend of gut and analytics. I know he is. I think he declined an interview with the Mets for their managerial opening, but it wouldn't surprise me. Jim Crane plucking the Rangers' top coach after the Rangers just beat the Astros in the ALCS. I could see that. Will Venable interviewed last time for this job when Dusty Baker got it. So that a little bit younger, but another maybe former Ranger guy that could get his name in the mix too if there is an opening.
I want to ask you about the Rangers. Are you surprised that they turned it around this quickly? I mean, people are going, "Oh, they lost 100+ games 2 years ago." Last year they lost 94 games. Forget 2 years ago. Last year they were 6 losses away from a hundo. And in the Athletics newspaper this morning, or newsletter, I should call it, they took us back to a quote from GM Chris Young at winter meetings when he was talking about getting Bruce Bochy in and their free agent pursuit. I'll read it to you because I thought it was fascinating because it kind of puts in perspective where they thought they were at. He goes, "The way I framed it was, it's hard. There's hard work ahead. We're still building. The reward will come, but it's not a situation where you're stepping in and getting immediate reward per se. You're coming in at a time where you're going to be part of the solution and there's a path to the reward." Does that factor in your decision? Is that something you're opposed to? It sounded like for the Rangers, their ceiling in their mind was, of course, everyone's like, "Hey, we want to win a World Series," but they were being realistic going, "Hey, if we sneak in a wild card this year, that's a big step from what we were just at." So how much do you feel like everyone has been surprised at how quickly they were able to pick up more free agents, do things at the deadline, and build themselves into an ALCS winner that didn't have anybody starting games last year in terms of their starting pitching staff versus what they had in the ALCS? All those guys were fresh.
I mean, you say that, and they have a $500 million middle infield. And like, I think certainly they didn't for the first 3 or 4 games of the ALCS. Neither Corey Seager nor Marcus Semien did much, but I mean, you saw Seager come alive last night. Semien reached base 5 times in Game 6. So you start there. You start with you get what you pay for, and those two guys are crucial. But I mean, for teams to do what the Rangers are doing right now, you need young guys. You need kind of surprises to come out of nowhere. I think they thought they were getting a good pitcher in Jordan Montgomery at the trade deadline. Did they think that he would be this in the playoffs? I don't think if you hooked him up to truth serum, I think they thought Max Scherzer would be that guy. But they got Jordan Montgomery, and he is pitching at a level that he's pitching at the best level of his career. And then you had Evan Carter come up, a 21-year-old kid, kind of reminiscent to Jeremy Pena last year. Pena was up all season, but Pena was kind of that surprise in the playoffs that really propelled the Astros. Evan Carter, you kind of get vibes off of that. Josh Young had an unbelievable rookie year. And then, you look at Adolis Garcia, he had his star turn. And then they got Bruce Bochy in there who I know we're debating nowadays how much managers truly matter and how much, managers' influence matter. I think Bruce Bochy shows us that it can, and it does. To bring him in, a guy that has done this before, is an established. This will be his 4th trip to the World Series. He's done everything. This is a Hall of Fame manager, and he came in, honestly, much like Dusty Baker did in 2020. Now, Dusty Baker didn't have a culture that he had to fix. He didn't have a culture that he had to go in there and, teach guys how to win. But, Dusty Baker came in here and was a calming influence, was a stabilizing guy that allowed this team to just go play, to just play free. He left the guys to their own devices, kind of let them do their own thing, and they thrived. And I'm not in the Rangers clubhouse every day. I don't know if that was a similar thing with Bruce Bochy, but these guys trusted him. And it really did seem, just from the interviews they gave and kind of how they played for him, it really seemed like the rapport between Bochy and that clubhouse really, really worked. And so, I mean, is it surprising? Not really, just given that how aggressive they were to go out and make their intentions known that they were going to contend. They wanted to contend. They wanted to challenge the Astros, and now they beat them. So, am I surprised? Not totally, but I guess the cast of characters that did it. Like when they traded for Max Scherzer at the deadline, I guess I would have thought Max Scherzer would be the pitcher we'd all be talking about after the ALCS instead of Jordan Montgomery. I didn't think maybe we'd be talking about Adolis Garcia and Evan Carter. I thought we'd be talking about Marcus Semien and Corey Seager. So, some of the complementary pieces that they have really shined, and it helps when you've got superstars on top of those complementary pieces.
So let's finish with a peek at the Astros offseason with the roster, whether it's for this year or looking ahead at upcoming free agents. Anything that you're keeping a really close eye on? So, and I'll throw a couple names in the mix, which obviously are talked about a ton. Both Kyle Tucker and Alex Bregman are going to be free agents after next season. Could that lead to a trade if they make offers right now and they don't feel like they're going to get extensions done? Or do we look back, and we barely covered it just because there was a lot going on during that time, but at the Dana Brown comments, basically saying, book it. Kyle Tucker's staying here long term, which is bold. You don't see that very often. I loved it, but I'm like, okay, Kyle Tucker's agents in camp love it too.
We're getting back to the question about the manager, right? Who's making the decisions? Dana Brown, I think Dana Brown is bullish, and he's very optimistic a lot. I think we have to remember what the Astros have done in free agency and what they've done extension-wise in the Jim Crane ownership tenure. Their largest free agent deal remains 4 years and $52 million. That's the longest to Josh Reddick. They gave $3 and $58.5 to Jose Abreu last winter, a deal that until September looked pretty terrible. Now, give Abreu credit. He rebounded in September, had a great playoff run for them. They have to hope that carries over. And then extension-wise, the two biggest extensions they've given, they gave Jose Altuve $150 million, and then they gave Yordan Alvarez $115 million over 6 years a couple of years ago. So Kyle Tucker is going to want more than that. I know he had a terrible postseason, but that shouldn't really mar what he did in the regular season. Was almost a 30-30 guy. Led the team in WAR. He's going to want more than that. Alex Bregman, quietly had a very, very, very good season, probably one of his better seasons as a big leaguer. He is going to want more than that. They're going to have to be uncomfortable doing some of these deals if they want to get Bregman done, if they want to get Tucker done. I can't envision a trade of either of those guys. If it comes to a point where, they decide that they're not going to extend these guys, I can't envision that because Jim Crane wants to win. He is a winning first and foremost guy, and trading either of those guys diminishes the Astros' chances of winning next season, especially in a division where they're going to need those. And then otherwise, you look at this team, a lot of the same faces are going to be coming back. Their biggest free agents are Martin Maldonado, Michael Brantley, and in the bullpen, Hector Neris has a player option that he's all but certain to decline. Ryan Stanek and Phil Maton are also free agents too. So what are they looking for? They probably need another veteran reliever. Another outfielder would help. And then, they need to do this winter what they didn't do last winter, and that's fortify the rotation. Get another veteran arm in here to, give them some depth. It doesn't have to be a frontline guy. They return Justin Verlander. They return Framber Valdez. Christian Javier will be back too. But, we saw this season the folly in thinking that you can get by with, I think they came into the season with 6 or 7 starters. That's what they thought they were going to enter spring training with, and that blew up in their face. Hunter Brown and JP France came up and did commendable jobs, but they both were tired at the end of the year. They need to fortify the rotation. I think they need another veteran arm in the rotation. So that'll be something they look at too. And I think this team, certainly as it's constructed and what it has coming back, certainly it's going to be the same faces, same sort of core, to expect another kind of run like they had this year. Maybe make it 8 straight ALCS appearances and maybe see if they can get over the hump, get back to the World Series.
Yeah, the window is still open for them, no doubt. Chandler, thanks for joining us, dude, right after the the hangover from last night. Appreciate you and all your coverage over there at The Athletic, and we'll talk to you in the offseason, man.
All right, thanks, guys.